Okay, so yesterday we worked with practicing this concept of being able to blend acrylic paint on the surface of our sheet. We practiced it until we could successfully get smooth transition of color from one color to the next. And you can see I have a couple of different versions of practice. Some of you practiced yesterday working with a value scale using this same technique. So I'm going to review right now for you how to do this using the concept of value. You can, if you want, to draw a line. I'm just going about a 1/2 inch, which is about as wide as my finger. It is also about as wide as my paintbrush, which makes it nice and easy. And what I'm going to do is just similar to what we worked on in class yesterday is I'm going to start in the middle with just my color of paint. And you can see I've stretched it fairly far past the middle. And I'm going to start with the darker side. So I'm going to add some black paint, and you can see that my blue is also mixed in. And I'm going to just pull this down so that my black and my blue mix together as I come down this direction to the center. So the goal is to have it look black at the end, or really a really dark version of my color. Actually, I don't want it to be all the way black. And then I want it to gradually shift into just being my color. If I find that I'm dragging paint one direction or the other, I can go ahead and wash my paintbrush out and dry it. And now with a clean, dry paintbrush, I will be able to just blend this. So if I find that that transition from one to the next isn't going particularly well, that is one sort of trick that I can take and clean my paintbrush out, and squeeze it dry, and then I just have my clean paintbrush to do a little blending for me. So I want that gradual shift from the dark of the black into my color, which in this case is this blue. But you can see I've done the same thing with the green and with the red. Now I'm going to do a similar process, but I'm going to use the white. Now, white is just like yellow, and it has very little, I'll say, mixing power. So my blue here is still a little wet, and I want to keep some of that blue. So you can see I'm working to blend my color right here on my sheet and working to have it gradually shift from that blue down here to white. And again, I have this kind of rocky space between where I have a white stripe, and I don't want a white stripe, I want a nice fade. So I cleaned my paintbrush out. And because my wet paint is still wet on the sheet, I am able to continue to blend this so that I have more of a fade from my color all the way to white. All right. I want you to practice this today until you can comfortably go from white all the way through a full range of your color into dark black. Once you've practiced those value scales a couple of times, we're moving on to using this same skill, but creating the illusion of three-dimensional space. For the sphere, the cone, and the cylinder, we need this capability to gradually blend and mix color while we're painting. For my cube, you can see that it's got a little bit different philosophy. I'm going to make a light side. So here I have my white. I always want to make sure that I'm darkening white and not try to lighten a color. So I'm gonna take a little bit of white and add some blue. And I'm gonna paint my light side first. And you can see, it doesn't take a lot of blue paint to really make that blue happen. You need very little of a color to make white change. There's like a little bit of a highlight here, so I'm gonna grab a little bit more white paint. Cleaned my paintbrush out again, and I'm using it now as a blending tool. Now I can see that this next side is a little bit darker. So I'm going to add just a little bit of black into my color. Now I just decided to add the black into the color that I'd already put the white in. And so you can see I have a color that's different than the color over here, because I added gray instead of just the black. And now I have that darker side of that cube. So this next side is the darker side. So the cube is fairly straightforward in that I just need to be able to successfully have 3 different tones of paint ready to go or to mix up as I paint. And then I just need to make sure that I am painting carefully and keeping my paintbrush with the edges. From here, I can just take some of the black paint and make a shadow. All right, so the cube is fairly straightforward because it's one side of each. When I'm working with one of the shapes that transition gradually from dark to light, I have to paint that like I painted my sphere. So what I'm going to do is, and then I'm thinking about that my shadow shapes match the shape of my object. So I'm going to have a highlight, and I'm gradually going to have bands of blue that sort of darken, and my values will all match that shape of the sphere itself. So I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to put in a swath of the blue. I am then going to grab some of my Payne's Gray, which is what we're using as black. And I'm going to blend right on my sheet that Payne's Gray section up into my blue. So I'm hoping for a gradual shift from that dark at the bottom. And I'm looking at my reference photo, and you guys should still have one of these tucked into the pocket of your sketchbook. Oops. I'm also working to stay in the lines of the object that I drew. My sphere just got one size bigger. And I'm working fast enough that I can blend that color right on my sheet of paper. Grabbed a little extra blue here. That edge was dry. I realized I wasn't blending any more blue in. I'm gonna clean my paintbrush out now because I have kind of a line there and I don't want a line. I'm gonna blend this up again. Making sure that when you do that, you're drying your paintbrush out. I had a little too much water, like eating through my paint now with that little bit of extra water that was in my paintbrush. So you can see I'm making lighter patches. It was not the goal. I am now going to do that opposite thing, and I'm going to add my white and grab some of this blue, and you can see that that white will not compete with the blue for very long. We always want to remember that you can see that my white took over, my blue took over my white very quickly. I'm gonna grab more white. Clean my paintbrush out again. White paint doesn't lighten color very well. We have to remember that always, that my motto is we darken white, we don't lighten color. And you can see that here with my blue. Now I can't leave it like this. That looks crazy town. So I do have to come back here and grab a little bit of blue paint. And I'm gonna have to blend this together a little bit more. Clean my paintbrush out, squeeze it dry again so that I can use it as a blending tool to get some of those light blues. If I find that I am just overtaking everything with one color or another, I can have to let it dry before moving on. As you can see, I'm trying to smooth the direction of these lines out a little bit. I want everything to stay curved looking. And right now I just have a clean, I had a clean paintbrush. I'm cleaning it out again, squeezing it dry, and I have enough white paint here that I'm gonna be able to mix this out, I hope. You can see, just working with little brush strokes to smooth those transitions so that I have a smooth light to dark effect on this little painting. And I'm going to do the same thing for all of the shapes that have those curved surfaces. Oops, I had white left in my paintbrush. Made a shadow that was lighter than my object. There we go. Tucking my shadow in underneath, pulling it out this direction. Filling in where my paintbrush had a little bit too much water. And this is why we practice that blending technique, so that we can blend while we're working with the acrylic paint. I can come back if I want and add a little more white now that it is a little drier, the blue. Again, I can't leave that hard line there. I'm gonna have to squeeze my paintbrush out. Squeezed it out, cleaned it off, squeezed it out. And I'm gonna just blend this out a little bit more. Just wasn't happy with how white that was, or how dark that was. Needed more of a light section here. So you're gonna go ahead and practice your value scales using that blending technique, and then you're gonna use the same blending technique to make one of each of the 4 shapes.